Snot's running down his nose. Greasy fingers smearing shabby clothes. Hey, Aqualung, drying in the cold sun, watching as the pretty panties run. Hey, Aqualung, feeling like a dead duck, spitting out pieces of his broken love. Oh, Aqualung, sun streaking cold, an old man wandering lonely, taking time the only way he knows. They're curtain bad as it bends to pick a dog end. It goes down to the bark and warms his feet. Feeling alone, the armies of the road, salvation at the moat, and a cup of tea. Aqualung, my friend, don't just start away uneasy. You poor old sod, you see it's only me. Do you still remember a December's foggy freeze, when the ice that clings onto your beard was screaming agony? Hey, and you snatch your rattling last breaths with deep-sea diver sounds, and the flowers bloom like madness in the spring. Sun streaking cold, an old man wandering lonely, taking time the only way he knows. Leg hurting bad as he bends to pick a dog end. He goes down to the bog and warms his feet. Feeling alone, the armies of the road, salvation at the moat, and a cup of tea. Aqualung, my friend, don't just start away uneasy. You poor old sod, you see it's only me. Aqualung, my friend, don't just start away uneasy. You poor old sod, you see it's only me. Sitting on the park bench, taking time the only way he knows. Like a diamond as he bends the big dogget when he goes down to the bar and warms his feet. Feeling alone, the army's on the road, salvation alone, and a cup of tea. Aqualung, my friend, don't you start away uneasy. You borrow some, though you see it's only a bee. Do you still remember December's foggy breeze when the ice that clings onto your beard was screaming agony? Hey, when you snatch your crackling raspberries with deep sea diver sounds and the flowers bloom like madness in the spring. Sun streaking cold, an old man wandering lonely and taking time the only way he knows. Like hurting bats as he bends the big dog and he goes down to the park and warms his feet. Oh, 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 oh. I feel like alone in the armies up on the roads, salvation and the road in a cup of tea. Aqualung, my friend, don't you start away uneasy. Oh, you poor old son, you see it's only me. Oh, 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 oh. Aqualung, my friend, don't you start away uneasy. Oh, you poor old sons, you see, it's only a bee. Oh, you know it's only a bee.